It happened the summer I turned 14. My parents both worked long hours back then. Dad was a night shift mechanic, and Mom managed a small diner off the highway. Most days, my little brother Jake and I were left home alone. It wasn't a big deal. We lived in a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs of South Carolina. Single-story homes, trimmed hedges, and bored kids riding scooters in the heat. That day felt like any other. Cartoons humming on the TV, a half-finished peanut butter sandwich on the counter, the air conditioner ticking in its tired rhythm. Until the knock came. Sharp, repeated, too loud for someone just dropping off a flyer. I muted the TV and peeked through the front blinds. A man was standing on our porch. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Thin, tan, wearing a light blue polo and khakis, the kind of outfit someone might wear to fix a water heater or a cable line. He held a clipboard, kept glancing over his shoulder like he was in a rush. When I cracked the door, chain still on, he smiled in this weirdly polite way and said he was with the electric company. He said there'd been reports of meter issues in the area, and he just needed to check ours real quick. Thing is, our electric meter was in the backyard, and I remembered my dad telling us once, real seriously, if anyone says they need to check the meter, don't let them in unless they show ID first. I asked the guy for ID, and he gave me a tight smile that didn't touch his eyes. I left it in the truck, he said, already backing away like it wasn't a big deal. I'll come back later. That should have been it. He walked off, and I watched through the peephole as he climbed into an old, dull gray pickup truck and drove away. But I couldn't shake the feeling something was off. The whole thing felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced what to say. I double-checked the locks, told Jake to stay out of sight just in case, and tried to calm myself down. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe Dad's voice was just ringing in my ears a little louder than usual. About 5 minutes later, there was a loud crash, not from the front, but from the back of the house. Glass shattered, then a heavy thud. My heart basically stopped. Jake screamed from the living room. I sprinted toward him, grabbed his arm, and dragged him down the hall to the laundry room. The only room with no windows, just a washer, a dryer, and a thick door. I told him to hide behind the dryer and not make a single sound no matter what. He was shaking like crazy, but he nodded. I shut the door quietly, turned off the light, and tiptoed back out. I didn't have a phone. Mine had broken the week before, but the house phone was still in the kitchen. Between me and that phone, though, someone was already inside. I crouched behind the hallway wall, barely breathing. I could hear the guy moving around, slow at first, like he was listening. Each footstep creaked across the wooden floor, echoing down the hall. He opened the hallway closet first. I could hear the rustle of jackets, hangers clanking. Then the guest room door creaked open. I couldn't see him yet, but I could picture exactly where he was based on the sounds. That part freaked me out. Knowing where he was but not being able to see him, like I was watching a horror movie with my eyes shut. I remember thinking, does he have a weapon? Is he alone? Is he going to check every room? There was this horrible moment when everything went quiet, like completely silent. No footsteps, no drawers opening, no movement. Just the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen and my pulse thudding in my ears. Then, all at once, the bathroom door slammed shut. Loud. On purpose. I jumped and almost gave away my spot. I had no idea what he was doing. Trying to scare us? Trying to draw someone out? I started to doubt if hiding had been the right call. But Jake was still in the laundry room, and as long as that door stayed shut, he'd be okay. That's all I cared about at that point. I slowly made my way to the kitchen, sticking close to the walls. I was almost there, could see the cordless phone sitting on the counter. When I froze. The guy had doubled back. He was standing right by the dining table, just a few feet away from the phone, his back to me. I don't know how he didn't hear me. He was muttering something under his breath, low and angry, opening drawers like he was looking for something specific. My stomach dropped when I realized he was checking for weapons, knives maybe. And then he paused, reached into his pocket, and pulled something out. A rag. He opened a drawer, grabbed a kitchen knife, and wrapped the rag around the handle. That's when I knew this wasn't a robbery. He hadn't even tried to grab the TV, or money, or anything. He was planning something worse. I backed up slowly, hands shaking. I couldn't get to the phone. If I moved wrong, he'd see me. So I did the only thing I could think of. I crawled back down the hall and slipped into the coat closet near the front door. It was cramped, smelled like dust and old leather, and I had to hold my breath to keep from sneezing. I shut the door just enough to see through the crack, and I waited. I don't know how long I was in there. 5 minutes? 10? He tore through every room. The office, my parents' bedroom. Even kicked open the bathroom door like he expected someone to be there. But when he got to the laundry room, he paused. He didn't open the laundry room door right away. I could hear him breathing on the other side. A slow, deliberate kind of breathing, like he was thinking. Maybe he sensed someone was in there. Maybe he heard something Jake accidentally knocked over. I was gripping the closet door so tight my fingers went numb. I was seconds from bolting, from doing something stupid, when the guy finally moved on. He walked back down the hall, his footsteps slower now, heavier, almost frustrated. Then, all of a sudden, I heard it. Sirens in the distance. Faint at first, but getting louder, closer. That was when everything changed. The guy started moving fast, cursing under his breath, knocking over a chair as he sprinted toward the back door. I heard the screen slam and the sound of gravel crunching under his boots as he ran toward the woods behind our yard. I waited, counted to 30, then burst out of the closet and ran straight to the laundry room. Jake was still there, eyes wide, frozen, gripping the dryer like it was a lifeline. I grabbed him and didn't say a word. We just held on to each other until the police knocked at the front door. Turns out, our neighbor 2 houses down had seen the guy circling the backyard earlier, acting sketchy, and she'd called 911 as soon as she heard the glass break. The cops got there just in time to scare him off. They never caught him. Not that day, not after. But they did take fingerprints, collected the knife he left behind, and gave us the usual "you were lucky" speech. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep unless every door and window was triple-checked. Jake had nightmares. My mom cried when she got home. My dad punched a hole in the garage wall. It's been almost 10 years since that day, and I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. The weirdest part? We never found out what he really wanted. He didn't take anything, didn't say anything. Just searched like he was looking for someone, or something. And that rag he wrapped around the knife, that detail haunts me. Like he came prepared for more than just breaking and entering. I don't know what would have happened if the sirens hadn't come when they did. I don't let myself think too long about that. All I know is every time someone knocks unexpectedly, I freeze, just for a second, and remember the sound of that back door shattering. I was 21 when it happened. It was my first time living away from home, and I just moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment with my college roommate, Tessa. The place wasn't much. Thin walls, creaky floors, one of those dated kitchens with off-white tiles and cabinets that never shut right. But it felt like freedom. I was juggling a part-time barista job and online classes, spending most evenings curled up on the couch with takeout and some show humming in the background. That night had started out just like any other. Leftover Thai food, a half-charged phone, and the buzz of city life faintly bleeding through the window. I had no idea how fast everything would unravel. It was around 10:40 p.m. when it happened. I was halfway through an old sitcom rerun, my feet tucked under a blanket, when the front door suddenly exploded inward, like actually flew open. Wood cracked. Hinges popped. I didn't even have time to scream before 3 men stormed in wearing black ski masks. One of them had a crowbar. The other 2 had guns. I froze. My brain just shut down, like someone hit pause on the whole world. I remember the couch digging into my back and my throat going dry. All I heard was, "Where's the stash?" and, "You got 30 seconds to give it up." At first I thought it was a joke, like maybe some messed up prank. But then one of them shoved over our tiny bookshelf, scattering all my textbooks and candle jars across the floor. Another one grabbed my backpack and dumped it out. Wallet, tampons, earbuds, everything hitting the floor in a heap. I tried to say something, anything, but my voice cracked. "You've got the wrong place," I said, barely a whisper. The tallest one turned and looked straight at me through the holes in his mask and just said, "Don't lie to me, bitch," like he'd been waiting to say it all night. I could feel something primal switch on in me, this raw panic I'd never felt before. Tessa had been in the bathroom when they broke in. I didn't even realize until I saw the faintest crack of light under the door and remembered she'd gone in to brush her teeth. My mind started racing. "Please don't come out. Stay in there. Don't make a sound." One of the guys kicked over a chair and started yelling again, asking where the money and drugs were. They were tearing through our living room like animals. I kept trying to tell them they were in the wrong unit, but the more I talked, the more agitated they got. And all I could think was, if they find her, we're both dead. I remember the sound of my heart pounding louder than anything else. The guy with the crowbar got in my face, close enough that I could smell his breath through the mask. Beer and something metallic, maybe blood. He grabbed my wrist so tight I felt my fingers go numb. "You think you're smart, huh? Playing dumb?" he growled. I shook my head, trying not to cry, but my whole body was trembling. Behind him the others were ripping open drawers, yanking the cushions off the couch, flipping over anything they could get their hands on. One of them opened my bedroom door and disappeared inside. I wanted to scream, but something told me not to, like my brain knew one wrong move would tip things over the edge. Tessa, bless her soul, had the sense not to come out. What I didn't know then was that she'd locked the bathroom door and was crouched behind the toilet with her phone, whispering to 911. She told me later she kept the call going the entire time, barely breathing into the mic. Meanwhile, I was face to face with a man holding a gun like he'd done it before. He started asking about names. Ty, Rico, Dre, names I'd never heard in my life. When I told him that, he cocked the gun. I still remember the clicking sound, how it made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. "Don't play me," he said, pacing like a caged animal. They said second floor, door with the dent. And that's when it hit me. We had a small dent right under the peephole, from when the movers accidentally hit it with the couch. The worst part was the look in his eyes when I told him again he had the wrong place. That moment of pause. Just a second where doubt flickered, and then it was gone. "So what? You're saying you don't know Dre?" I shook my head. "Then why you got his girl's jacket in your closet?" I blinked. I didn't even know what he was talking about until I remembered Tessa had thrifted a bright red puffer jacket a few weeks ago. Maybe it looked familiar to them. Maybe that was enough to justify everything in their heads. Whatever the reason, it was like they convinced themselves we were lying, and now they were out for payback. One of them came out of my room with my laptop and old DSLR, and I felt a punch in my chest. "This all you got?" he asked. I didn't answer. The guy holding my wrist finally let go and pushed me back down onto the couch. I hit the armrest hard, knocking over a candle. He pointed the gun at my face and said, "You better pray you're not lying." Then, like someone flipped a switch, they started moving faster. One of them shouted something I didn't catch, and suddenly they were all grabbing whatever they could. My speakers, my purse, even the freaking toaster. It felt surreal, like I was watching it all happen from outside my body. I could hear sirens in the distance, faint at first, then louder. One of them looked toward the window and muttered, "Shit, cops." And then everything moved in fast forward. They bolted. Just like that. No final warning, no threats. They snatched the last of the stolen crap and sprinted out the door like a pack of wolves that had just heard a bigger predator coming. I stayed frozen on the couch, unable to move, even as the door hung half off its hinges and the hallway light poured in. I remember staring at the space where they'd just been, waiting for them to come back. Tessa came out of the bathroom with her phone still pressed to her ear, shaking like a leaf. Her eyes locked on mine, and we just stood there in total silence until the operator said the officers were outside, and it was safe to open the door. When the cops came in, everything felt numb. I couldn't even explain what had happened at first. It was like my brain had dumped half the memory out of fear. Tessa did most of the talking. They asked us a million questions. What did they look like? What did they take? Did we know the names they mentioned? The worst part? One of the officers said there had been another call from someone on the first floor, a guy named Dre saying some dudes were coming after him over a drug deal gone bad. His unit number? 1B. Ours was 2B. Just one floor off. That stupid dent on the door probably sealed it for us. We ended up staying at a friend's place for a week after that. I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every footstep in the hallway sent my heart into overdrive. I kept replaying the moment that gun was pointed at me, the smell of beer and sweat behind the mask, the way the guy said, "You better pray." It's been months, and I still can't sit on that couch without feeling sick. We moved out as soon as the lease let us. Found a place with a security gate and a working intercom. I carry pepper spray now. Tessa got a door camera. We double lock everything. I never got my laptop or camera back. Cops said the chances were slim unless the guys were caught with them, which they weren't. No arrests, no real closure. Just a memory that comes back stronger than ever whenever I hear a loud bang or someone knocks too hard on the door. I know people say things like this don't happen often, but let me tell you, once is enough. If you live in an apartment, especially one that's cheap or in a transitional neighborhood, take this as a sign. Get cameras, know your exits, and maybe, just maybe, fix that dent in your door before someone else thinks it means something. I moved into that house right after my 26th birthday. It was a small, single-level rental in a quiet neighborhood just outside Tacoma, Washington. I'd just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and the idea of having a place all to myself felt like the fresh start I desperately needed. I work remotely as a medical transcriptionist, so I was home most of the time. The house wasn't anything special: cream siding, a beat-up mailbox, and an old oak tree in the front yard that made the place feel kind of cozy. The landlord, an older guy named Harold, told me up front it was an older property. Nothing fancy, but livable. I didn't mind. I wasn't looking for perfect, just quiet. The first week was uneventful, which was exactly what I wanted. I unpacked, got into a little routine, and even started cooking again, something I hadn't done in months. But by the second week, small things started to feel off. I'd go to the kitchen and notice the cabinet door left open when I swear I'd closed it. One morning, I found a spoon in the sink covered in peanut butter. I hadn't eaten peanut butter. I figured maybe I was just being forgetful or clumsy. Living alone for the first time, maybe my brain was playing tricks on me. Still, a part of me felt that subtle, almost imperceptible unease, like when you enter a room and feel like someone just walked out. Then it got weirder. I woke up one night to the hallway light on. I could see it under the gap in my bedroom door. I always turn that light off. I'm a total night owl, and I need it pitch dark to sleep. I assumed I left it on, though it nagged at me. The next night, the same thing happened. Light on. Only this time, my bedroom door, which I always keep shut, was cracked open. Just a few inches, but enough to make my stomach drop. I got up with my heart pounding and checked the house. Every window was locked. The front and back doors were still bolted. I started to think maybe I was sleepwalking. That scared me more than anything. But the turning point, when everything fully tipped into horror, was 4 nights later. I had just gone to bed around 11:30 p.m. and I'd been lying there maybe 10 minutes when I heard it. A low, dragging noise. Not from inside the room, from above it. A slow scrape, like something, or someone, moving across the attic floor. At first I froze, straining my ears. It stopped. Then came a dull thump, then a muffled shuffle. My chest tightened, and I whispered, "What the hell was that?" to myself, like an idiot. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, scanning the ceiling like that was gonna help. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I couldn't pretend it away anymore. I called my landlord first, asked if there was any attic or crawl space above the bedroom. He said, "Not really an attic, but there's a crawl space that runs above the ceiling, accessed through a vent outside by the back of the house, but it's sealed." That word, sealed, kept echoing in my head. I hung up and went straight out there. Sure enough, behind some overgrown bushes near the back corner, I found the vent. And no, it wasn't sealed. The screws were lying in the dirt like someone had unscrewed them by hand. I just stood there for a while, staring at the open dark slits of the vent like it might blink. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to call the police and be that tenant who freaks out over nothing, but my gut was screaming at me. So I called my brother Derek, who lived about 30 minutes away. He's one of those guys who doesn't panic, ever. He came over that afternoon, climbed a ladder, and shined his flashlight into the crawl space. I stayed below, watching his face for any sign of, "This was all in your head." But when he looked down, he didn't say anything right away. He just climbed back down and said, "Call the cops, now." We waited outside while the officers checked the place. 2 squad cars showed up, and they took it seriously right away. One of them came back and asked if I'd noticed anything missing, food, clothes, anything like that. I said no clothes, but yeah, some food. He nodded like that confirmed something. About 20 minutes later, another officer came out and told me there were signs someone had been living up there. They found a ratty sleeping bag, a few empty snack wrappers, and a backpack. But the worst part? He said the backpack had a set of photos in it. Of me. Taken through my bedroom vent. Close up. From above. That moment didn't feel real. I just remember going cold, like ice spreading through my limbs. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't stop them. They said whoever it was had been up there for days, waiting, watching. They think he'd climbed down when I left the house, probably through the vent, eat, maybe walk around. That's why things were moved. That's why lights were on. They believed he'd planned to stay longer, maybe even waiting for a time I didn't lock my bedroom door. That night I'd heard the noises. They think I'd almost caught him moving. He must have realized I was starting to suspect something. That's probably why he left. They didn't catch him that night, or the next. The officers said they put out a bolo with the description based on the ID found in the backpack. His name was Troy Hensley, 38 years old, with a long list of petty crimes and a restraining order from a woman in Spokane for stalking. He had apparently been squatting in homes before, but this was the first time they'd seen behavior that escalated like this. I asked if I'd be safe staying somewhere else, and one of the officers looked me dead in the eye and said, "We'd recommend it." That was enough. I packed a duffel and stayed with Derek for over a month. For a while, every noise made me jump. I couldn't sleep unless the door was locked, a chair propped under the handle, and the windows checked 3 times. I'd catch myself staring at vents or ceiling corners, waiting for something to move. And worst of all was knowing he'd been watching me from above, quietly, like some horror movie I didn't realize I was living in. It felt like my privacy had been peeled away without me even noticing. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't noticed? What if I hadn't woken up? What if I'd left the back door unlocked just once? I still don't have answers to those questions, but I think about them constantly. About 6 weeks after everything happened, I got a call from the police. They'd found Troy sleeping in a condemned house 2 towns over. He had the same backpack, same clothes. They brought him in without incident. I didn't even know what to feel when they told me. Relief? Rage? All I said was, "Is he going to prison?" They said yes, for breaking and entering, trespassing, and violating parole. It wasn't as much time as I wanted, but at least he was off the streets. At least he wouldn't be climbing into someone else's crawl space anytime soon. I moved out of that house the same week. I still double-check every vent and crawl space in any place I stay. I don't think that'll ever go away. I never met Troy. I never saw his face. And honestly, I don't want to. I don't need to. Because I already know what it looks like. I see it in my head every time I close my eyes. Quiet, patient, watching me from above, just waiting for the right moment. That house gave me a new kind of fear. The kind that doesn't go away with time. The kind that teaches you that real horror doesn't knock. It crawls in when you're not looking. I've never been someone who scares easily. I teach 3rd grade, so chaos is kind of part of my everyday life, and I've gotten used to handling surprises, messes, even the occasional emergency. But what happened on my daughter's 6th birthday changed the way I look at the world, and especially at my own home. My name's Kayla, I'm 30, and I live in a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York. At the time, it was just me and my daughter, Lily. Her dad and I split a couple years back, and though things weren't always easy, I was proud of the little life I'd built for us. That Saturday morning started out perfectly normal. Too normal, in hindsight. I'd taken Lily to the grocery store with me early that morning to pick up a few last-minute things for her birthday party. Balloons, juice boxes, napkins with unicorns on them. She insisted on wearing her glittery tutu and those cheap plastic heels that clacked across every aisle. People smiled at her. I smiled too. We were back home by 10 a.m. My parents and sister arrived a little after that, and everyone went out into the backyard to start setting up while I stayed behind to fix the cake situation in the kitchen. I remember the smell of frosting still on my fingers, the sun pouring through the window, and thinking how lucky I was, how happy. I didn't hear a door open. I didn't hear a single creak. But when I walked back into the kitchen with the box of candles, there was a man standing by the drawers under the counter. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with a gray hoodie pulled up, jeans stained at the knees, and hands covered in dirt. At first, I froze. My brain couldn't process it. My first thought was that he was a friend of my brother's or maybe someone my dad had invited without telling me. But then he turned around slowly, and his eyes locked on mine. His expression wasn't shocked. It was intentional, like he'd been waiting. He didn't say anything. He didn't hesitate. He just lunged. I don't know how I moved so fast, but something kicked in. I ran through the hallway yelling for Lily, who was still inside, playing dress-up in the living room. She looked up just as I scooped her into my arms and sprinted for the bathroom at the end of the hall. My heart was pounding so hard I couldn't hear myself think. I slammed the door and locked it, pressing my back against it like that would somehow keep him out. Lily was crying, confused, asking if it was a game. I didn't answer. I just kept listening. And I heard him. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate, like he knew exactly where we were. I held Lily close while trying to keep my breathing quiet. Every sound outside that door felt amplified. The floor creaked once, then nothing. Then again. I don't know how long he stood there, but I could feel it. Him on the other side of that thin slab of wood, deciding what to do. I kept glancing at the little bathroom window, wondering if I could fit Lily through it, wondering if I should start screaming. But before I could move, I heard it. The back gate opening. Voices. My sister's laugh. People were outside. My family, guests arriving. And somehow, some part of me thought, maybe he'll leave now. But instead, he banged on the door. Just once. Sharp. Like he wanted me to know he wasn't in a rush. Lily screamed. I clapped my hand over her mouth without even thinking. I could feel her tears on my palm. She was shaking. I wanted to say something to calm her down, but I couldn't get the words out. I just kept holding her. Then the banging stopped, and everything went dead silent. That kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I didn't hear footsteps this time, just the faint sound of the side window creaking open, then a quick thud. I waited a full minute before I even dared to unlock the door. My legs were trembling so bad I thought I might fall over. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. No one. Nothing disturbed, except the drawer he'd been going through was still hanging half open, and I noticed now that he'd left muddy prints across the tile. I ran outside with Lily in my arms, shouting for help. Everyone turned to look at me like I was crazy. My dad ran in with a bat, my mom already on the phone with 911 once she saw my face. I couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear anymore, but from that deep, skin-crawling realization that he had been inside our house for who knows how long. And we'd left the door unlocked. Just for a second. The police arrived within minutes, but he was long gone by then. They checked the house, took fingerprints, asked 100 questions I barely processed. Lily stayed glued to me the entire time. Later, when they reviewed our home security footage, they found something I can't forget. The man had been sitting across the street that morning, watching. He'd followed us back from the grocery store. You could see it on the video. He walked past our house twice, then disappeared. The officers said he probably waited for everyone to go out back, then slipped in through the front, which we'd left open just long enough to carry in the party supplies. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with Lily next to me, every little creak in the walls setting me on edge. I kept replaying it over and over in my head, how quiet he'd been, how calm. He wasn't desperate, wasn't looking for money. He didn't grab anything. He didn't say a word. He just stood in our kitchen like he belonged there. That's what haunts me the most. That stillness, that confidence. Like this wasn't the first time he'd done it. Like he was studying how far he could go. And if I hadn't walked in when I did, if Lily had been alone for even 1 minute, I can't let myself finish that thought. After the incident, I installed deadbolts, cameras, motion lights, everything. For weeks, I jumped at every sound. I made Lily sleep in my room, and every time I dropped her off at school, I felt like I was scanning the crowd for his face. The police never caught him, said he probably wasn't from the area, just passing through. But that doesn't make me feel any safer. What makes it worse is how normal everything felt until it wasn't. A sunny backyard, balloons, laughter, and just feet away, something that didn't belong. I started talking to neighbors, asking if they'd seen anything strange that day. A few mentioned someone walking down the street earlier in the morning, but no one paid much attention. Why would they? He didn't look threatening. That's what everyone says. Just a guy in a hoodie. Maybe a little rough around the edges. But that's the thing about people like him. They don't always look like monsters. They don't have to. They just wait for a door to be unlocked, a moment of distraction. And then they step in like they've done it 100 times. To this day, I keep thinking about what he was looking for in those drawers. There wasn't money there. Just random junk, tape, pens, coupons, some of Lily's drawings. and part of me wonders if he was even looking for anything at all. Maybe it was never about stealing. Maybe it was about being close. Too close. The kind of close that makes your skin itch when you think about it later. I moved 6 months after it happened. New locks, new neighborhood, a little farther out. I still flinch when I see someone in a hoodie on the sidewalk. And every time I hear Lily laugh, I remind myself, I was just in time. I'm not the type to post stuff online, especially not something like this. But ever since it happened, I've felt this weight on my chest that just won't let up. I guess sharing it here is my way of processing it, or maybe warning someone else out there. My name's Carlos, I'm 36, work full-time as an HVAC tech, and I live with my 5-year-old son Eli in a rented single-level house on the east side of town. It's not fancy. Brown carpet that's seen better days, popcorn ceiling, one of those sticky drawers in the kitchen you gotta jiggle just right. But it's home, and it's quiet. Or, it was. This happened back in early March, a Wednesday. I remember because it was my day off, and I'd just made pancakes for Eli, dinosaur-shaped like always. He was still in his Spider-Man pajamas, watching cartoons, and I was elbow-deep cleaning the lint trap in the dryer when I heard the knock. Now I've worked enough service calls to know how people look at you when you show up unannounced. Cautious. That split second of hesitation. So I felt that same flicker when I opened the door and saw 2 men standing there in dark gray uniforms. Matching patches on the chest, clipboard in one hand, one of them holding a small tool bag. The taller guy, pale, with a reddish beard and 2 white teeth, introduced himself as Mark with the landlord's maintenance crew. He said they'd gotten a report of a leak near the water heater and they were checking properties in the row just to be safe. It was strange. I hadn't noticed a leak, and the landlord usually texted ahead. But I was caught off guard. The guy had that firm, practiced tone. Not pushy, just confident enough to make you feel dumb for doubting him. Still, I hesitated. I remember glancing past them, noticing their van parked a little crooked at the curb. No company logo, just white, the kind contractors use. That was my first red flag, but I didn't listen to it. Maybe it was the clipboard, or the way they stepped back politely, like they weren't in a rush. Eli had wandered into the hallway, clutching his stuffed blue turtle, watching me. I didn't want to scare him or make a scene, so I let them in. They nodded, stepped inside, and the shorter one, darker skin, stockier build, barely said a word, went straight toward the hallway. I told them the water heater was in the closet near the back and turned to grab my phone off the counter. That's when it happened. Before I could even reach for it, I felt a shove from behind. Not hard, but firm, deliberate. I turned around and saw the red-bearded guy pointing a gun at my chest. "Kitchen. Now," he said. His voice had lost that fake customer service tone, replaced with something sharp, cold. My stomach dropped. I remember hearing Eli gasp and then dart into the bedroom. I wanted to run after him, but the guy cocked the gun. The other one was already pulling zip ties from his tool bag. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I kept thinking, this isn't real. This isn't real, but it was. They tied my hands behind my back and forced me onto the kitchen floor. The tile was cold, my cheek pressed against the grout line. I didn't move. I couldn't. The taller guy knelt beside me while the other one rummaged through drawers like he already knew where to look. "Where do you keep the cash?" he asked, low and steady, like we were having a conversation over coffee. I told him I didn't keep cash in the house, which was true. My bank account was paycheck to paycheck and barely breathing. "What about jewelry?" he asked next. I almost laughed, even tied up. "You think an HVAC tech with a 5-year-old and a busted coffee machine has diamonds lying around?" I said. maybe a little too bitter. He didn't like that. He stood up and kicked a chair across the room, letting it smash into the counter. I flinched hard, but he didn't touch me. Not yet. Instead, he muttered something to the other guy, who was now opening every cabinet and tossing stuff to the floor like it was a race against a clock I couldn't hear. I kept praying they wouldn't go into Eli's room. I was trying to stay calm, slow my breathing, listen for any movement from that end of the hallway. That's when I remembered the old tablet I'd given Eli to play games on. One of those chunky ones in a rubber case. He didn't use it much, but I'd shown him how to use the emergency call feature just a few weeks back, like a fire drill. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. But now, lying there helpless, I could only hope he remembered. The house felt heavier by the second. Every drawer slammed like a gunshot. The bearded guy kept pacing, circling the kitchen like he was expecting someone to show up any second, eyes twitching toward the front window. My wrists were going numb from the zip ties, and my tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. Minutes felt like hours. Then, and I swear this sound is burned into my memory forever, I heard a police siren in the distance. Faint, but getting closer. The bearded guy froze mid-step. The other one bolted to the back of the house without a word. It all happened so fast. The guy with the gun cursed under his breath, yanked open the back door, and ran. I was left alone in the kitchen, still tied, with my heart about to explode. I couldn't call out. I just kept yelling in my head, "Please don't let them hurt Eli. Please let him be okay." Seconds later, the front door burst open, and 2 officers rushed in with their weapons drawn. I started shouting as best I could, telling them I was the homeowner, well, renter, and that my son was in the back room. One of them ran past me while the other cut the zip ties from my wrists. I've never cried like that before. Not even when my ex left, or when my dad passed. When I saw Eli in the officer's arms, holding that beat-up tablet like it was a trophy, I lost it. He was shaking, but safe. He'd locked himself in the closet and dialed 911 all on his own. They said his voice was calm, told the dispatcher everything. 2 men, fake uniforms. My daddy's on the kitchen floor. I still don't know how he did it. I hugged him so tight I could barely breathe. The cops cleared the rest of the house, but those 2 guys were already long gone, disappeared through the back fence like ghosts. The only thing they left behind was the broken chair and the mess they made tearing through the place. No fingerprints, no names, nothing. The detective who showed up later that afternoon was a quiet woman named Harris. Sharp eyes, calm voice, the kind of person who didn't flinch at much. She asked a lot of questions, took pictures, dusted for prints even though she already looked skeptical they'd find anything. I remember her pulling me aside while Eli sat on the couch with a blanket around his shoulders. "You're not the first," she said. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a random home invasion. She told me 2 other houses in the neighborhood had been hit the same way in the past month. Same fake uniforms, same routine. Knock, some excuse about maintenance, then they strike. One of the families had been on vacation. The other, they weren't as lucky. An older couple. The husband ended up in the hospital after trying to fight back. I felt sick. Like we were just names on a list they were working through. After the cops left and the sun started going down, the house felt different. Like it wasn't ours anymore. Every sound made me jump. A car door outside, the fridge kicking on, even Eli dropping his cup in the sink made me flinch. I ended up dragging his mattress into my room that night, and we both slept there. I kept a flashlight and a wrench next to me, like that would actually help. I barely slept, just laid there listening to his breathing and thinking about how close we'd come to. I don't even want to finish that thought. The scariest part? How easy it was. No forced entry, no alarms tripped, just a confident knock, and my front door opened like it was nothing. The next morning I found myself walking through the house in a daze, noticing all the little things they'd touched. Drawers hanging open. My kitchen cabinet broken at the hinge. Eli's toys scattered. They must have checked his room after all, though I don't know when. That made my blood run cold. I kept picturing them standing in that tiny room while my son was hiding just feet away. Maybe under the bed or in the closet, his tiny hands clutching that tablet like a lifeline. He never said much about it after, just that he stayed quiet like the ninjas do. I didn't push. I didn't want to know more than he was ready to say. But that silence, it stays with you. Over the next few days, I replaced the locks, added a security camera, put up one of those little no soliciting signs even though I knew it was pointless. We started locking every door during the day, even the bathroom. Eli wouldn't go near the back door anymore, and I didn't blame him. My landlord was shocked when I told him, said he never sent anyone, that the water heater was fine. I felt stupid, but what cut deepest was how calculated it all was. These guys didn't just pick a random house. They studied it. They picked people who looked vulnerable, single parents, retirees, folks who wouldn't ask too many questions when someone showed up in uniform. About 2 weeks later, I got a call from Detective Harris. They'd confirmed it. The same two guys hit a house 3 blocks over. Same MO. This time the homeowner had security cameras, and one of the guys showed his face for a split second near a side window. It wasn't enough to get a full ID, but it was something. Harris said they were building a task force, trying to piece together license plates, matching uniform patches, anything. But she warned me not to get my hopes up. "They're good at this," she said. "Too good." That stuck with me. These weren't junkies or amateurs. They were professionals. Like this was their job, and they had probably done this in other cities before anyone here even noticed a pattern. I still live in the same house. Rent's decent, and with the cameras and deadbolts, I feel a little better. But I'm not the same person I was before that day. I don't answer the door without checking the cam feed first. I keep my phone in my pocket at all times. And I've taught Eli things I wish he didn't have to know at 5 years old. How to lock the door from the inside, how to hide in the closet, how to call 911 again if he ever has to. He doesn't talk about that day much, but sometimes I catch him staring at the kitchen where I was tied up, like he's trying to figure something out his brain's too young to process. And every once in a while he'll ask, "Are the bad guys still out there?" I never really know what to say. What haunts me isn't just what happened. It's how close it came to something worse. If they'd gone into his room first, if Eli hadn't remembered how to use the tablet, if I'd said something to set one of them off, I replay it all the time. It's like my brain's stuck on this loop, trying to figure out how we got out of it alive. And yeah, I still feel stupid for opening the door. But I also know I'm not the only one who would have fallen for it. They were convincing, calm, dressed right, said all the right things. And that's the part I want people to hear. Trust your gut. If something feels off, even just a little, don't ignore it. Because that tiny hesitation might be the only thing standing between you and something you never thought could happen to you. Anyway, that's it. I don't know if they'll ever catch those guys. Maybe they've already moved on to another city. Maybe they're still driving around neighborhoods pretending to be someone you're supposed to trust. But me? I don't take chances anymore. I don't open the door unless I see a familiar face or get a heads up. And if anyone ever tells you they're here to check a leak, you damn well better make sure someone actually called them. Because I didn't, and I almost didn't make it out. I'm Jenna, I'm 27, and I live alone in a split-level house just outside a mid-sized city in Oregon. I rent out the lower level as a short-term Airbnb to help with the mortgage. It's got its own entrance, bathroom, kitchenette. Nothing fancy, but it stays booked most weekends. I work remotely, so I'm usually home, but I try to give guests privacy. This happened last fall, mid-October, right as the evenings were starting to get cold and the trees were dumping leaves like they were in a race. I still don't fully understand how it happened, but it's been messing with my sense of safety ever since. The guest that weekend was a young woman named Marcy. Quiet, polite. She checked in Friday night and was supposed to stay until Sunday. But around noon on Saturday, I got a message saying she had to leave early for a family emergency. I told her no problem, and once she was out, I went downstairs to start cleaning. I always do a full reset right after checkout, strip the bed, wipe down surfaces, restock the coffee and mini toiletries. Everything looked normal, but I did notice the small sliding window in the bathroom was unlocked. The latch was broken. I figured maybe Marcy had opened it and it just snapped. It was a cheap old window, one of those crank kinds. Still, nothing else seemed weird. So I made a mental note to fix it later and moved on. That night, I was upstairs on the couch, watching reruns of The Office with a blanket over my legs and a cup of hot tea. I remember that because it was one of those perfect quiet evenings you don't think twice about until later. Around 9:30 I heard a noise, just a creak from the floorboards beneath me. It didn't set off any alarm bells at first. The house is old, built in the 70s, and it creaks like crazy when the temperature drops. I paused the TV and listened. Nothing. Just wind tapping some tree branches against the siding. I unpaused the show and settled back in. Maybe 10 minutes later I heard it again. This time louder, closer. It wasn't just a random creak. It sounded like weight shifting, like footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the lower level. I muted the TV and sat completely still. I stared at the stairs that led down to the rental suite. I told myself it had to be the pipes, or maybe something shifting in storage. But I hadn't put anything heavy down there. I leaned forward, straining to hear. The footsteps moved again, only now they were on the steps, coming up. I don't think I've ever moved so fast in my life. I jumped up, grabbed my phone off the coffee table and backed into the kitchen, instinctively putting the island between me and the stairs. My heart was slamming against my chest so hard it made my vision go a little fuzzy. I kept staring at the dark stairwell, waiting for something, anything, to confirm what I thought I'd heard. And then, he appeared. A man, mid-30s maybe. Tall, maybe 6'2", skinny build, with a faded hoodie and jeans that looked dirty, like he'd been crawling through something. His hair was messy and flat, like he'd been wearing a beanie for hours. And his face looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. I didn't recognize him. Not from the app, not from the neighborhood, not from anywhere. He didn't look surprised to see me, just blank, like I was a mild inconvenience. He didn't say anything, just stood there, breathing, eyes scanning the room like he was trying to figure something out. I remember saying, "Who are you?" Like an idiot. Like it wasn't obvious this guy wasn't supposed to be here. No answer. I asked again, louder this time, trying to sound firm, but my voice cracked halfway through. That's when he took a step forward. Just one. That was enough. I bolted. I ran out the front door barefoot and called 911 from the porch while hiding behind my neighbor's bushes. The dispatcher kept asking me if I was safe, if the man was still inside, what he looked like. I couldn't give good answers. I was shaking too hard, and everything felt like it was happening underwater. Police showed up in under 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. They cleared the house while I waited across the street, wrapped in a jacket my neighbor had brought me. When the officer finally came back out, he told me the guy was gone. Just gone. No broken doors, no sign of forced entry. Nothing stolen, nothing disturbed. But then they found the crawl space. I didn't even remember it at first. It's this weird little compartment under the stairs in the rental unit, barely big enough for a person to lie down in. I always kept it closed with one of those twist latches. When the officers opened it, there were signs someone had been living in there. A ratty old blanket, an empty granola bar wrapper, and a water bottle. That thing had no insulation, no light, and barely enough air. He must have been hiding in there the whole time, probably since the night before. What really messed with me afterward was thinking about the timing. He must have gotten in sometime before Marcy left, maybe even while she was still there. The police later told me the code he used to unlock the door was from an old listing, a completely different property I used to rent 2 years ago when I lived on the other side of town. Somehow he had gotten access to it. The system had let it through because I'd reused a few numbers on the smart lock. Rookie mistake, I know. But still, who does that? Who waits for a guest to leave, then slinks inside like a cockroach and hides in a crawl space for God knows how long? I changed all the locks the next morning, got rid of the smart system entirely, and replaced it with a physical key system I can manage myself. Installed security cameras too, one in front, one in the hallway, one covering the backyard. I haven't had another issue since, but I also haven't been able to fully relax in my house again. Every creak makes me freeze. Every shadow under the door makes me check twice. It's like something got rewired in my brain. And I haven't reopened the rental. I know it's a loss financially, but I'd rather pick up a second job than risk something like that happening again. Sometimes I still think about his face. Not because it was scary, but because it was empty. Like there was no plan, no panic, no thrill, just routine. Like hiding in strangers' homes was something he'd done before, something he was good at. That expression haunts me more than anything else. It makes me feel like I wasn't his first house, just maybe the first one to catch him before things got worse. The cops never found him. They think he ran out the back and hopped a fence before they arrived. There were no prints, no ID, nothing left behind they could track. Just a guy who slipped in through a window and waited. I guess what scares me the most isn't that it happened. It's that it could happen again. That someone could be there right now, listening to me breathe, watching through some vent I forgot to check. Because after something like that, the worst part isn't what you see. It's what you'll never know for sure.